Hello, everyone. Are we live now? So community members can hear us as well as the CCP Advisory Board members. This is Catherine York. I'm the CCP analyst. Welcome. We're going to wait just a few minutes to give a couple of our additional members an opportunity to log in, as well as more community members.
Well, while we've got a minute, Catherine, I can give you a report back. I did call the director of the jail visitation program at Loaves and Fishes, and she confirms that they do, through their legal clinic, give reminders to people about court appearances and other official deadlines for their cases. So Loaves and Fishes is already doing that. And if we can encourage or get some of the other community organizations to do the same with their service populations, that could be a really good thing.
Yes, that does sound like a great thing.
Bill, we have public defenders that help run that Tommy Klinkenberg legal clinic at Loaves and Fishes.
Right.
So we're in touch with them daily. They call us, they ask us for input about next court dates. We provide them that information, and then we provide staffing out there twice a week too.
Yeah, they all know you there, Tiffany.
Oh no, I'm just saying that's the relationship we've got to build with other community organizations.
Exactly. It would be a very useful model.
So it looks like we've got a few additional people online. Make sure I've got everybody on here. Is it okay if I go ahead? I'm just going to read through our introduction, public comment procedures, and our agenda to get things going. First and foremost, public comment. The public is encouraged to participate in the Community Corrections Partnership Advisory Board meetings. This meeting is being held remotely via Zoom to remain in compliance with directives of the county, state, and Centers for Disease Control and Prevention and slow the transmission of the coronavirus. Please see the CCPAB webpage for remote access details. Speakers, unfortunately, today's meeting only has one option for speaker participation. Future meetings of the CCPAB will include an audio option for comments from members of the public who wish to verbally address the advisory board during the meeting. Today's meeting will only include a comment option through Zoom Q&A function, and verbal comments in the future. To make a verbal public comment, utilize the Q&A button on the bottom menu in Zoom. Is it possible to show the slide that indicates where you would do the Q&A, TJ? So there's a slide to show you exactly where you'll need to go to put public comment. So refer to the agenda and the live meeting to determine the best time to type the public comment for the agenda item in the Q&A tab to be placed in the queue for a specific agenda item. When the facilitator opens public comment for a specific agenda item or off agenda matter, Zoom, oh, I'm sorry, this is not the slider I was looking for. Where is it? Not the Brown Act one, the other one. There we go. There's the Q&A function. So that's how on the bottom of your screen, there's a little Q&A function that you can use to type in your comments for each agenda item. And at the end of each agenda item, we'll provide an opportunity for public comments. And then at the end of the meeting, we will provide an opportunity for comments on off agenda items. And each agenda item will be read out loud from the Q&A section so that it's recorded, and it will be posted on the website after the completion of this meeting. In the future, CCPAB meetings will include an option for email submission of public comments. So thank you everyone for joining us today. Welcome to our first Community Corrections Partnership Advisory Board meeting. And I did not include advisory board members on our agenda. I apologize for that. And I'd like to read out loud the representatives. We have Leanne McCluskey from.
On out, I don't know. And then. So
I'm
then
sorry, can you mute everyone except for me, please?
take words out of paragraphs.
So our probation representative on the CCPAB is Leanne McCluskey, and the alternate is David Linden. From the sheriff's office, we have Brad Rose. From the district attorney's office, we have Amy Holliday. From the public defender's office, we have Tiffany Sinnott. Our representative from Sacramento Superior Court is Michelle Jeremiah, and our representative from the Sacramento Police Department is Jason Morgado. We also have 4 community members. William Norwood is one of them. Melinda Avey is our 2nd community member. Bill Piper is our 3rd, and Muriel Strand is our 4th. We also have 1 additional member, which the agencies are all from the CCP Executive Committee, that has yet to be filled from the Social Services Agency. So the agenda today, that was the welcome and announcements. For item number 2, we have Brown Act training. Our County Council Representative Rick Heyer is going to conduct the Brown Act training so that we all know that the rules of this public body. Rick, welcome.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. If we could go ahead to the next slide. Before I get into this, I just wanted to say, if you have a question, please don't hesitate to raise your hand and ask as it comes up. I think the presentation will work best that way. So let me just start with the general rule that the Brown Act is, and I think I said this last week when I introduced the idea that this was a Brown Act body. The Brown Act is not about government efficiency. It is about transparency and doing the public's business in full view of the public, where the public has the right to participate, to see their government in action. And sometimes that means that things are a little bit inefficient, perhaps, but it is the price to pay for that transparency. We could have the next slide. It applies to legislative bodies of local agencies. And that, of course, is the Board of Supervisors. It is also the CCP. And when a body that is a Brown Act creates a standing subcommittee, then that standing subcommittee is also a Brown Act body. And that is why this body is a Brown Act body, because it is a standing, as opposed to an ad hoc subcommittee that would be created for a limited purpose with a limited subject matter that they were to consider. Any questions? No, okay. Next slide, please. The Brown Act is really all about the idea of a meeting, and there can be legal meetings and there can be illegal meetings. But a meeting, regardless of whether it's legal or illegal, occurs when a quorum or more of the body, the Brown Act body, is discussing matters that are of concern to the body. So for the CCP, and I believe it is also true for this advisory body, anytime there are, what is it, Catherine, 6? You're on mute. You're on mute, Catherine.
Sorry. Yes, 6 is correct. There's 11 total members if we do pass the bylaws.
Okay, so anytime 6 or more of you are talking about matters that are related to criminal justice, that's a meeting. And meetings can happen when we're all together, whether it's in person or via Zoom. They can also happen through mediums like the telephone, email. They could happen any time or place too. They could happen certainly in a government building, but they could also happen in a coffee shop or in line at the supermarket, if that's where a quorum or more of you were together. And they can happen sequentially. And I'll go into that in a little bit more detail as we move along. Next slide, please. Here's some examples, and I'm going to go through this fairly quickly today because we have a limited amount of time. I'm not going to read all these slides, but you see in examples of meetings there. We can have the next slide. Then there are on examples of unlawful meetings. So an unlawful meeting generally is any time that does not comply with all the rights of the public. And I'll go over
We
those in a
see
moment.
happening in chapters. And the more we can publicize that, the more we become partners with chapters rather than the old watchdog.
Okay. So meetings, pre-meetings, in other words, where a quorum of more of you get together before the meeting and talk about matters, again, that are criminal justice related. Post meetings, we have a regularly scheduled meeting and then a quorum or more of you get together and talk about things that are criminal justice related after the meeting. And serial meetings, these are common examples of unlawful ones. And again, I'll explain serial meetings in a moment. Next slide. Well, here it is, serial meeting. Serial meeting is any time, again, a quorum is of the body is discussing matters of criminal justice related, but rather than it happening all 6 of you at once, it's as you see here, they can happen either in a hub and spoke or sequential. And it's so member A talks to member B, maybe member A then talks to C, or maybe B goes and talks to C. But if that happens in a, whether it's sequential or hub and spoke, where the 6 people get to be part of the same conversation, then you have created a serial meeting, and that is prohibited. And serial meetings could happen, they often happen inadvertently through emails. So let's say Catherine sends out an email saying, here's the agenda. And then one member sends an email to another member and says, you know, item number 2 is really important to me. And then that member sends that email to another person. And then maybe they take that third person takes that email and now has a phone conversation with a 4th person. And you get the idea that once you've hit 6, you've had a serial meeting. 6 different individuals on the body, that is a meeting. And it can happen through intermediaries too. So when we're talking about a city council, the Board of Supervisors, or really any Brown Act body, staff is absolutely able to go and give briefings to each member. And they would do it individually. What staff cannot do is go to one, let's say, go to Phil Cerna, a member of the Board of Supervisors, and give a briefing. And then go to Patrick Kennedy and say, you know, when I was talking to Supervisor Cerna, he was concerned about this. And then keep going until they've taken what was a concern to Supervisor Cerna to 2 other members, because the quorum there, of course, is 3. And that would create a serial meeting. And it is illegal because it happens outside of the public's ability to participate. Any questions? I can't see hands up, so somebody has to tell me if there's.
No questions. And I
Okay,
don't
great.
see any Q&A questions.
All right, great. If we could have the next slide, please. And like I said, they happen a lot through technology. I don't suppose they happen very often through faxes anymore, but certainly phone calls, email exchanges. One of the classic inadvertent ways a serial meeting is created is staff sends out a email to all the members, and then one of the members hits reply all and says, item number 2 is really concerning to me. Well, that reply all has just created a, in this case, a direct meeting because it went to everybody. But so we have to be very careful when we use these technologies that we're not creating meetings or serial meetings inadvertently. Any questions? We skip this side.
I do
So,
have a question. Can I ask
Yeah.
a question?
Yeah.
So rather than via email, when we are covering a specific agenda item that is of concern to one member, that's where they bring it up during the meeting that's live?
Well, the question is, I have a member has a concern about a specific item. When do they bring it up? And certainly when they bring, is that a fair, Catherine? So certainly it is appropriate to bring it up in the public meeting when it's on the agenda. It would also be appropriate for that member to speak directly to staff, to you, Catherine, and say, you know, this is a concern of mine. I really want to make sure we get this on. As long as that then is not communicated to 5 other members of the body, it's not a serial meeting. It's not a meeting at all because there's not been a quorum. It's only when it starts going from that one member out to the world of the body that the potential comes that it's an illegal meeting.
That's beyond the public meeting?
Beyond the public meeting, right. Did that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
So the practice tips that my office recommends is avoid substantive communications directly or through others with other members regarding items that are on the agenda or likely to be placed on future agendas. And I would just amend that to say, avoid substantive communications with other members of this body that have anything to do with criminal justice in a macro sense. I realize that there's an attorney from the DA's office on, there's an attorney from the public defender's office. The jobs, of course, require you to communicate about criminal justice matters, cases specific, right? First of all, the 2 of you communicating directly is not a meeting because there's only 2 of you. But if you're gonna, but you probably should avoid discussing things that are going to be more macro criminal justice issues until you can be in this forum. And that same goes for members of probation, the SAC PD, the sheriff's department. If it's one case, you know, case specific, I don't think that violates that. That's not what this body is about. It's not about one individual case. It's about things that are more systematic to the criminal justice system that we should avoid having substantive discussions about unless we're in one of these meetings. Any questions about that?
Done.
And discussing procedural, time, place, date, availability for meetings, those are not substantive. It's not an issue to have 6 or more of you saying I'm available on Thursday next week. That's not substantive, and it's not a meeting. And I should just go back a second. If 6 or more of you happen to find yourselves at a Little League game, it doesn't mean you have to all avert your eyes and pretend you don't know each other. You can certainly talk about what's going on in the game. You just cannot talk about criminal justice matters, because once you do, you've taken what was just really nothing legally and turned it into a meeting under the Brown Act. So it's the quorum plus discussing matters that are substantive to the body that you sit on. I'll ask one more time. Any questions about that? No?
No.
Okay. We have next slide.
Yeah, I have a question, which is, let's say, I did this today, as a matter of fact. After the public meeting had begun, I brought a plane of information to Catherine, or alternately, I might ask her for a plane of information. And this had to do with something that is not specifically on the agenda, but it was simply between her and me on a point of information. No
Yep.
action taken or implied.
And that was, I debated whether I was going to say anything during that, but that was a meeting because all of you could hear it, or at least 6 or more of you could hear it. And it was arguably in violation of the Brown Act, because nobody that was interested in loaves and fishes and what might be going on there would have any idea that that was going to be discussed today, because it was not on the agenda. So the way to handle that in the future is we can include in future agendas, board member comments. And that would be a time where you could say on the 15th or whatever day it is, I went and I took a look at Loaves and Fishes. I was impressed with what I saw there, and just, you know, give that kind of comment, but not have any substantive discussion about it. Just this is what I did kind of thing. But you would save substantive discussions for that until it could be put on the agenda.
Sure. Oh, that completely makes sense. But just simply closing the loop on an open question or something.
The other way,
the comments to the agenda, I think that covers it.
The other way to handle it, of course, is to just talk to Catherine directly about it, and not in a forum where other members are on the call or on the Zoom.
Oh, okay. Well, I did that deliberately during the public part of the meeting so that it wouldn't be concealed.
I understand, and you know, in the grand scheme of things, it's not the kind of it's more of a. I think that's the learning process of the Brown Act, right? Is that this is why we put this presentation front and center on today's agenda.
So Rick, any item that members would like on the agenda, they simply email me, and that's how we address it in the meetings, is through an email to me and get it on the agenda.
That's one way they could do it, and it should be just to you, not to the whole body.
Okay.
The other way to handle it is to wait till board member comments at the end. We can put that on future agendas, and the members say, you know, we need to discuss whatever the topic is. I would like it on a future agenda.
Thank you. And it looks like Muriel has a question.
Yes, will our meetings be recorded?
Yes, I believe they are.
Meetings that are recorded, anybody can access what was said. Will that continue to happen after Zoom? You know, well, actually, personally, the Zoom meetings are way more convenient than meeting in person, but anyway, you see what I'm saying?
Yes, and I don't know the answer to whether we will record after the era of Zoom is over, assuming that even happens. But certainly they are recorded now. And I should add that one of the rights of the public is to record the meeting themselves. So anything that is said and everything that's said is open for the public to certainly hear, but also to record. Did that answer your question? Yeah. Any other questions? All right, permissible gatherings. Yeah, I won't read all of that. The main takeaway there is even if you were going to an educational conference that was about criminal justice, 6 or more of you could go to that and be there at the same time. You would just have to avoid having discussions amongst each other while you were there. If we could have the next slide. So here are examples of types of meetings, and I would think for this body, the types that you will see are the first two, regular time and place, and then I know on today's agenda is the consideration of a special meeting. Emergency meetings are really, I don't think, going to come up for this body. They exist. Of course, we've had in the last 2 years lots of emergency meetings at various Brown Act bodies having to do with COVID or fires or other things that require an immediate decision. And that's really what emergency meetings are for. They're not, I don't think they would really apply to an advisory body. Can we have the next slide? All right, basic rights of the public. And this is why when these rights are afforded, it's a lawful meeting. When these rights are not afforded, it's an unlawful meeting. So the rights that the public has to receive an agenda and understand what is going to be discussed at the meeting that day, to get notice of the meetings. And for a regular scheduled meeting, it's 72 hours notice. They have the right to attend meetings. They have, as I mentioned, they have the right to record a meeting, and they also have the right to comment. And the right to comment is both to specific items that are on the agenda, and then to also comment and have a space on the agenda to make comments about off-agenda matters. And the reason for the public to have the right to make comments on off-agenda is without that right specifically carved out, it would be very hard for the public to tell any body, any Brown Act body, what was a concern of theirs, unless the body somehow already had it on the agenda. So this is the right to have that off agenda. That off agenda is to say, hey, here's our concerns to me. Could I have the next slide? The body has the right to access written materials. Okay, sorry. The notices to be provided, as you see, 72 hours. And I apologize. I won't read all that to you, but does any questions about the last bits that we've gone over?
None in Q&A.
Okay. We could have next slide. The agenda must contain a brief description of what's going to be discussed so that anybody looking at it could know, A, that topic's on and exactly what's going to happen. And that brief description should give some indication whether it's going to be an action item, i.e. there's going to be a vote on it, or if it's just simply a presentation. I don't think you all will have closed sessions, but if there were, there would have to be a specific space where it said what the subject matter of the closed session was, or subjects of the closed session. And as I mentioned, there must be a time for public comment for agenda and non-agenda items. Could I have next slide? The right to attend. When we get back to having live meetings, the facility must be accessible, and that's accessible to all, which is to say that it needs to be in an ADA, Americans with Disability compliant facility. There's no precondition to attend. Nobody has to prove their citizenship or their residency. Sometimes you will see sign-in sheets at some of these advisory body committees or boards. That's permissible, but to sign in is purely optional. Nobody has to sign in to attend the meeting. The conduct, like I said, the public has the right to record, and that right is can be exercised as long as it's not disruptive to the meeting. There should never be secret ballots. The whole point of the Brown Act, of course, is to have transparency, and that includes to know how members of the body voted. No mandatory sign-ins, and as you see, teleconferences may be used for public comment. Well, of course, that's been blown wide open during the area of COVID. I think we've covered this. Next slide. The right of the public to comment comes with a limitation that the period or the time to comment can be limited to a reasonable time. If you were to watch the Board of Supervisors, generally people have 2 minutes to make a comment. If there were a large number of people and somebody was a representative of a group, it might be reasonable to say if there's a representative, and rather than have 10 people comment for 2 minutes each, we'll give the representative 5 minutes. And that way all their thoughts get out in that time frame, and you don't, it's more efficient that way. But the main takeaway is the public's right to comment can be limited to only being for a reasonable period of time. The public, while they have a right to comment, do not have a right to necessarily get an answer. And especially when we're talking about non-agenda items, when somebody comes to comment on that, members of the body should simply listen and not comment on that. And the reason is because it's off agenda. Nobody but that person that came to comment knew it was going to be discussed that day. So therefore, if you have a discussion about it, you're not affording the public the right to know it was going to be discussed. And of course, the public does not have a right to disrupt or create a disturbance in the meeting. Yeah, consequences of Brown Act. There can be civil action where a body is enjoined from future violations. If there was a decision made that it could be voided, this is especially consequential when we're talking about contracts or money that's been spent. To have that decision voided, it comes with lots and lots of consequences. And if somebody, some entity comes and is successful in showing there was a Brown Act violation, they can recover attorney fees and costs. And for knowing and intentional violations, it is possible that a violation of the Brown Act is a misdemeanor. Next slide. And that's it. Any questions?
I have a question. So on the Zoom format, we have a Q&A in which only hosts and panelists can see the question. And what if there is a panelist who puts a comment that we can all see? So as a facilitator, I'm obligated to read that out loud, correct?
Yes. And the panelists should say the other way, the board members should really not be making any comments in the Q&A that are about off agenda items. And they should, because that's a meeting, right? And really, if they're going to make any comment, and I realize this is a bit clunky today as we're getting our feet under us, but the best way, the best practice is to raise your hand and say it out loud. So everybody that's participating in the meeting, but also more importantly, all those members of the public that are watching it can hear that comment and see whatever reaction comments that flow from it occur.
Speaking of that, there is a raised hand for Muriel.
Okay.
Can I get a copy of the slides?
They're posted on our CCPAB webpage.
Oh, that's a great opportunity for me to explore. Thank you. I will look for that.
So Rick, for the Brown Act, all of the documents that we review, it includes posting all of the materials, correct?
Yes, and it comes with the idea that materials are going to be available when we post. So certainly if, for instance, the bylaws had been drafted at or before the time the agenda was posted, they should have been posted with them. Now I happen to know that we were working on the bylaws up until this afternoon, so they couldn't be posted. But once a document is available, it should be posted and available to the public at the same time it's available to the board or to the body.
So there are no additional questions and I don't see any hands up. Is there anything else you need to do before closing out item number 2?
No, and I would say that I appreciate everyone's attention, and I suspect that there will be questions as we move along, and I'm available. I'm just an email away. If you have a question, I can hopefully answer it. So don't hesitate to contact me.
So as far as public comment goes for each agenda item, since we are closing out agenda item 2, I can let the public know the Q&A is closed for agenda item 2 and we're moving on to 3 so they can submit questions for 3 until we close that, correct?
Correct.
Okay, well, that's what I'm announcing here. So we'll go ahead and move on to item number 3, the CCP Advisory Board bylaws. And the staff report noted that the bylaws for the Community Corrections Partnership Advisory Board were drafted to align with the purpose and membership established by the CCP at their meeting on February 4th, 2021. and to provide policies to guide activities, ensure public participation, and ensure compliance with state and local requirements. The recommendation is a vote to approve the bylaws and move forward with efforts conducting analysis and making recommendations to the CCP regarding updates to the AB 109 plan for public safety realignment investments that maximize effectiveness of the criminal justice resources. This action may be taken by a majority vote of those present and by not less than a majority of the quorum. And that was one of the things Rick covered in the last item. I do want to go ahead. I know it's going to take a while, but I want to take this opportunity to actually read the bylaws out loud, if that is okay with everyone. It's only 3 pages long, as you see. So, and they are crafted after standard bylaws. The name in Article 1, the name of this board is the Sacramento County Community Corrections Partnership Advisory Board and will be referred to as the CCP Advisory Board in the following bylaws. Article 2, authority, AB 109, chaptered fiscal year 2010-11 on April 4th, 2011, and AB 17, chaptered fiscal year 2010-11 on June 30th, 2011, which added Penal Code Section 1230.1 to require the local community corrections partnership develop and recommend a plan to the County Board of Supervisors regarding public safety realignment to maximize the effective investment of criminal justice resources. To achieve the overarching goal of having an advisory body for the CCP that provides ongoing data collection, evaluation, and analysis, as well as input from local agency and community stakeholders, including formerly incarcerated individuals, to meet needs for annual AB 109 plan updates. The CCP Advisory Work Group was established by the CCP on February 4th, and the CCP approved an AB 109 plan update on May 6th that renamed the CCP Advisory Work Group to the CCP Advisory Board. So this authority section just explains how the CCP created this group and how it's a permanent group and not a temporary group. And its official name being the CCP Advisory Board was noted in the AB 109 plan most recently approved. And Article 3, the purpose, the CCP Advisory Board is responsible for conducting analysis and making recommendations to the CCP regarding required annual AB 109 plan updates that incorporate further findings and input from local agency and community stakeholders, including formerly incarcerated individuals, align the AB 109 plan format and content with Board of State and Community Corrections recommendations, and ensure County Board of Supervisors approval of the updated AB 109 plan for consideration during the budget process each fiscal year. The Article 4 members, CCP Advisory Board members will include local agency stakeholders and community representatives. 1 local stakeholder member will be designated by each of the 7 CCP Executive Committee members. 4 community members will be selected through a public application process that is determined by a vote of the Community Corrections Partnership, which was done this year in February. Article 5, meetings. Section A, regular meetings. The CCP Advisory Board will meet on a monthly basis at a consistent hour, day, and in a place and/or forum available to the public for participation as determined by a vote of the CCP Advisory Board. Public notification of meetings shall be provided at least 72 hours prior to the meeting. Section B, designees. Designees of the CCP Advisory Board must be identified in writing to the CCP Advisory Board Chair and staff. Section C, quorum. A quorum is no less than a simple majority of the membership of the CCP Advisory Board. Authorized designees can be counted toward a quorum at CCP Advisory Board meetings only in the absence of the principal member. Article 6, miscellaneous. Section A, Brown Act. The CCP Advisory Board is subject to provisions of the Brown Act and must adhere to all requirements. Section B, convening special meetings. The chair of the CCP Advisory Board may convene a special meeting. Written notice must be served at least 24 hours in advance. Only items included in the written notice may be discussed or considered. Section C, ethics training and conflict of interest. CCP Advisory Board members are required to participate in ethics training every 2 years, and court members are required to participate in ethics training every 3 years. All members shall provide proof of ethics training completion to CCP Advisory Board staff, who will maintain a list of members and completion dates for ethics training and remind members when training is due. Members of the CCP Advisory Board shall abstain from voting on any issue in which the member has a financial interest as defined in section 87103 of the Government Code. Section D, public comment. CCP Advisory Board welcomes and encourages public participation in meetings. When it appears there are several members of the public wishing to address the CCP Advisory Board on a specific item, at the outset of the item, the chair of the advisory board will announce the maximum amount of time that will be allowed for presentation of testimony. Matters under the jurisdiction of the CCP Advisory Board and not on the posted agenda may be addressed by the general public following completion of the regular agenda and any off-agenda matters under consideration. Article 7, the chair. Section A, officers. The officers of the CCP Advisory Board include a chair and a vice chair, each of whom must be a member of the CCP Advisory Board. Election of officers. Election of officers will take place in September. The CCP Advisory Board staff will solicit nominations and present a list of candidates in September each calendar year. The CCP Advisory Board elects its officers during each September meeting of the calendar year. Additional nominations for officers may also be made by CCP Advisory Board members at the election meeting. The term of office is to begin the first meeting of the calendar year. So Rick, this is an area, if we elect somebody today, because we haven't been in place for this entire year, will we be able to keep this off or start an officer today so that the rest of this calendar year and starting in January, the chair could serve?
So I think that's up to the body. If that's what their wish is, that's the way we could do it. Or, I mean, the important thing for the body to understand is this is what staff's recommendations are. If they have edits or concerns, this is the time to discuss them. And then once somebody thinks that there's a document that or a set of bylaws that meet what they hoped in the bylaws, they could make a motion to accept the bylaws. And then if that's seconded by another member, then it is appropriate to vote on it. And if 6 members vote yes, 6 or more, then these are the bylaws. So it's not really, it's the body's decision whether they want that to be something that comes up in a few months or to carry through for a full year.
So I'll just continue and finish reading through the bylaws, and there are a couple of hands by members. So I'll go through member comments first. We'll do member discussion, and then we'll do the public comments before we move on to a vote. Is that correct?
That's before there's a vote, we should definitely allow the public to comment, and so that the body can hear the public's concerns or suggestions before there's an action.
Okay. So I will move forward. Section C, terms of office. Officers serve for 1 year and may run for re-election at the annual election. The chair may serve a maximum of 2 consecutive years. The chair may serve more than 2 one-year consecutive terms after a break in service of 1 full term. The chair is the presiding officer at regular and special meetings of the CCP Advisory Board. Officer succession. In the absence of the chair, the vice chair presides at regular and special meetings of the CCP Advisory Board. In case of a vacancy in the office of chair, the vice chair automatically assumes this office until the next election of officers. In the event all officers are absent, the CCP Advisory Board members shall designate a member to act as temporary chair, or a majority of CCP Advisory Board members present will elect a temporary chair. officer vacancy. Should a vacancy occur in one or both officer positions and after the required succession of officers has taken place, then a special election to fill the vacated positions will be held at the next regular meeting that a quorum is present. Such specially elected officers will fill the designated vacancies until the annual election. Oh, there needs to be a correction there. It'll be during September of the calendar year, and are eligible for election into the offices they are filling or into other offices at that time. Voting, each CCP member has one vote. Authorized designees may vote on behalf of a member only if the absence of the principal member and if they have been identified by the member in written correspondence addressed to the chair and staff. So it looks like this part's duplicating what it was said before. Is it okay, Rick, if I make adjustments on the draft that would remove duplication?
Again, assuming that that's the
Wishes of
will of the body.
Okay,
You can certainly make that as your recommendation as staff, but ultimately if that's that's what the body approves, then that will be the bylaws.
thank you. Action may be taken by a majority vote of those present and by not less than a majority of the quorum. Parliamentary authority, Robert's Rules of Order revised governs all CCP Advisory Board meetings except in instances of conflict between the rules of order and the bylaws of the CCP Advisory Board or provision of law. So there are two corrections here I need to make, that the staff recommendation correct and add advisory board to the language here. And then for the final section, amendment of bylaws, proposed amendments to the bylaws are to be included on the agenda of a regularly scheduled CCP Advisory Board meeting. If approved, any action in response to the proposed change in the CCP Advisory Board bylaws becomes effective immediately. So I have two member questions. Bill, I'm not sure if you or Tiffany were first. I was reading. So Bill, I'll go ahead and call on you first since B is before T in the alphabet.
I have two. One is in the very first paragraph where you talk about our official name changing. I think you should, it turns out it's the second paragraph. We were renamed. I think you should replace that comma with the word as, rename the CCP Advisory Group as the CCP, a comma doesn't do the job there.
Okay.
And then the second thing is on meetings and scheduled meetings, are we obligated to have a meeting every single month? Because if we say in November decided that our December meeting crashed into everybody's holiday or Christmas plans and we're going to put it off till January, is that permissible?
So I believe the chair would be able to cancel a meeting, but I have to ask Rick for consultation.
Yeah, that's correct.
The way I read the bylaws as they have been presented from staff, that yes, the chair would be able to look at the agenda or look at the conflicts and say, we're canceling the meeting for December, whatever the month was, and not run afoul of the bylaws.
Okay, good. So that's just a good practical consideration.
Was that it, Bill?
That's it.
And then Tiffany?
Yeah, I guess my question, I don't believe these bylaws were sent out prior to this meeting. And so this is the first time I'm viewing it. And because we're doing it by PowerPoint, that's why I try to raise my hand in the beginning. I can't see it on my screen. It is so small. It's like this small of my screen, Catherine. I could hear you, but I couldn't read and follow along. So my request would be to not vote for the bylaws and give us as a body an opportunity to review them so that we can have a real fruitful discussion about any changes we want to make or suggestions, and have an opportunity to really read these bylaws. I think this is such a critical part of our group and organization because we're setting voting standards and rights. We're talking about positions and offices. And I just feel like I would like an opportunity to really review them. So I don't know what's proper for procedure, but my motion would be to not vote on them today and give us an opportunity to review them.
So Rick, on that, I do have one more member comment. Do I take the member comment or move forward with the motion?
I think you take the member comment. We'll see what the comment is. And then you, I think need to open it up for public comment if there is any.
Yes, there is.
And once those are done, you can ask, assuming the next comment is not going to be a second, you can ask if there's a second to that motion.
Okay, so I do have the next comment from Muriel.
It's not clear to me if we actually need to have bylaws in place at this time, but we could perfectly well accept them now and put possible revisions on the agenda for our next meeting, which I guess is in October.
We would have to decide the next meeting today.
And I noticed that that day is a holiday.
So prior to today's meeting, the advisory group had an agreement relative to a monthly meeting schedule of the second Monday each month from 2 p.m. to 3:30 p.m. So I had assumed we would have that as a proposal today, and I don't know for sure if that's what's going to happen, Muriel. So we'll have to work out with the group what the schedule will be. And Amy also had a comment, so I'm going to go ahead and open it up for Amy's comment.
Thank you. I just wanted to second Ms. Sinnett's motion. I also had trouble reading them, even with my glasses. So I was listening to you, but it would be nice to be able to review them carefully.
I should note that all of the documents that you see online here are also available on the CCPAB webpage currently. They've been loaded on the webpage. So if you would like to print them out or look at them separately, you're welcome to. Bill, did you have another comment before I move on to community comments?
Yeah, I do, only that I support Muriel's idea. We should probably put something in place today and then agenda that we'll revise it next month.
Okay. So with the comments from the members, I'm going to go ahead and move on and open it up to comments from the community. And I have two comments. One says, I have a request, please. I understand the bylaws. It seems that since the community was not given opportunity to know/study the nominees for election of officers in advance, it would be appropriate to delay the vote until the next meeting. The next comment is if the answer to my, oh, it's the same person. If the answer to my first question is no, because the bylaws read September, I further request that the bylaws be suspended, assuming they are passed by vote of the body to allow for an appropriate delay in nominations. So those are the only two community comments. And we have two suggestions from members that one is to make edits and come back next month for a vote to hold and delay the CCP bylaws. The other is to move forward with the bylaws and come back next month with edits. Is that correct? Oh, it looks like I have a member comment. Tiffany, go ahead. You're muted, Tiffany.
Sorry, you
It's
can't click on the link on the webpage for the CCPAB. I do note that under the I, it says CCPAB bylaws, but that link is unclickable. So all the other links you can click on and it can pull something up, but we do not have an ability to pull up the bylaws and review them at this
So
time.
there's a correction that needs to be made on the webpage. I will make sure that gets done today.
Thank you.
So Catherine,
Yes.
because you have a motion from Tiffany and a second from Amy, you have a properly moved motion, and now that needs to be voted on. And as I understand the motion, it is to continue this matter, i.e. consideration of the bylaws,
Uh-huh.
to a subsequent meeting that the body will have.
So with that said, the motion to continue the item to next month with a second from Amy, I call a vote from members.
Yeah, and you need to do a roll call vote so that you can properly record how everyone voted on it and the public can see how they voted on it.
Okay, I have one more member comment. Can I take the 2 more member comments, actually?
3.
Sure.
So Rick, in terms of the rules, the member comments can come after community comments.
Yeah, the body is permitted to keep discussing it until the action is either continued or there's been an up or down vote one way or the other.
So then do I open up community comments again after further discussion? No? Okay, that was the question I had.
Yeah.
So Muriel had a comment. Go ahead, Muriel.
Yeah, so now members have an opportunity to discuss the proposed motion. That's where I think we are.
Now,
And I just wanna-
actually, the motion has already been made and seconded, so it should be voted on now.
Oh,
So before taking additional comments, I need to take a vote?
I'm not ready. Well, I assume that if it was not okay for us to defer this until next month, Rick would have said something about that already.
That's right. I think
Okay,
that is,
I'm good.
that's a perfectly permissible motion to say, I want to continue this. That's almost always, unless there's some other legal authority saying it has to be done today, which there's not in this case, that a continuance is a perfectly legal and appropriate motion if that's what the body decides to do.
So I need to do a roll call vote now. So I will go ahead and document the voting members. Leanne McCluskey, are you present?
Yes.
David Linden, are you present? I'm sorry, David is a designee. Brad Rose, are you present?
I am.
Amy Holiday, are you present?
I am.
Tiffany Sinnott, are you present?
I am.
Michelle Jeremiah, are you present?
Yes.
Jason Morgado, are you present?
I am.
Bill Piper, are you present?
Yes,
Muriel Strand, are you present?
Is present.
Melinda Avey, are you present?
I am.
William Norwood, are you present? So William is the only absent member. We have a quorum. In order to do the vote, do I just recall and then get a vote from each member that's present?
Yes. And-
Okay, Leanne? I'm sorry, what?
Can I time? Actually, this is good learning vehicle, because we should probably establish the quorum, not probably, we should establish the quorum at the top of the meetings.
Okay, so at the beginning of every meeting, establish
Yep.
the quorum. Okay. So Leanne, we're voting on the motion to continue this item to next month for the bylaws. Leanne, do you vote yes?
Yes.
Brad, do you vote yes?
Yes.
Amy, do you vote yes?
Yes.
Tiffany, do you vote yes?
Yes.
Michelle, do you vote yes?
Yes.
Jason, do you vote yes?
Yes.
Bill, do you vote yes?
I have a question for Rick before I vote. Is that permitted?
Sure.
That is, assuming we pass this motion, which I don't have a problem with, we are then an official body, but we have no bylaws for a month, no framework. That's not an issue.
No, I mean, you haven't had bylaws going into this, so I don't know what another month.
Okay, well then I vote yes.
Melinda, do you vote yes?
I vote yes.
Muriel, do you vote yes?
Yes.
Sorry, I am on,
Yeah, no, I'm gonna let you get your.
William Norwood, you present?
yes, I am.
Do you understand the motion underway for your vote?
I'm sorry, no, I don't. I'm just getting on with you.
The vote is to continue until next month, the consideration and vote on the bylaws. Do you approve waiting until next month? to vote
Yeah,
on the
I will.
bylaws? I'm sorry,
Yes.
William, I did not hear your answer.
Yes.
Okay, that was a yes vote from William. So it's a unanimous yes vote from all members. So the motion carries, and we will delay the Community Corrections Partnership Advisory Board bylaws to next meeting.
So now that the body has decided to continue this, I think you have to continue de facto the vote on officers, because you don't have bylaws that give you permission to create officers. So I think that vote necessarily has to be continued to the next meeting as well.
Okay, and so that would also mean, what about item number 5, where there would be a recommendation? Because the next meeting of the Community Corrections Partnership is the first week of October, and there was a recommendation for them to hold a special meeting in December. Can we still move forward with item number 5 without bylaws?
I believe you can. And I believe also on that meeting, you could put either the bylaws then or the bylaws next month, whenever is the most convenient.
Okay, so I have 3 member comments. I'm not sure if they're on item 3 or not before we move forward. Do I go ahead and open up for member comments even though the vote's done? How does that work?
Once a vote's done, the item is
Closed?
but we're learning here. So why don't we go ahead and take the comments, and then we can move forward after those comments or questions.
Okay, Leanne, you had a comment?
May I just answer Tiffany's question as to where to find the rough draft of the bylaws on our CCP page?
Sure.
Okay, it's on this, when you click on our page, it says agenda materials, you click on there, and all the agenda items plus the rough draft should pop up for you.
Tiffany, you also had a comment. Was there an additional comment you had?
Yeah, I wasn't sure if you voted on the vote, Catherine.
No, I don't count. I'm staff.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I misunderstood that. Thank you.
And was there one other? I saw one other hand, but it doesn't look like the hand is there anymore. No other comments. So I do have public comments, Rick, that have shown up in the Q&A, but they are on non-agenda items. So do I just wait until after so I delay item 4 de facto and move on to item 5? And then after item 5, open.
I apologize. I don't have the agenda up in front of me. When do you have non-agenda comments?
At the very end after item 5. So it's
Then
the
that's when
last item.
And that's when you would take them, at the very end.
Okay. So currently we are on item 5. Item 4 is being held over until the next regular meeting due to the fact it can't be held, or a vote can't be made until we have CCP AB bylaws. So item 5 is recommending CCP hold a special meeting on Thursday, December 2nd, 2021. And in the staff report, currently the CCP holds regular meetings twice a year in April and October. So there's a recommendation that the advisory board consider and develop updates to the CCP bylaws that would increase the frequency of their meetings for updates from the advisory board regarding activities, findings, and recommendations. A recommendation to the CCP at their next regular meeting on October 7th, 2021 to hold a special meeting on Thursday, December 2nd, 2021 allows time needed for development of recommended updates to CCP bylaws. So I recommend this body vote to approve this action. Do I have any comments from members on item number 5?
Or a motion.
Or a motion? Well, we still need public comment before we do a motion, right?
Is there any public comment on this?
I do not see any public comment on item number 5.
Yep.
These are all off agenda, the only additional ones.
Okay.
So do I have a motion from anyone on, oh, I'm sorry, Tiffany?
Make a motion to go ahead and have a special meeting on Thursday, December 2nd.
I'll second.
Seconded by Muriel. So I'm going to read out your names for a vote of yes or no. Leanne,
Yes.
Brad,
Yes.
Amy,
Yes.
Tiffany,
Yes.
Michelle,
Yes.
Jason,
Yes.
Bill,
Yes,
Melinda,
Yes.
Muriel,
Yes,
and William.
Yes.
Okay, the item is approved by unanimous vote. So item number 5 is closed out. We can move on to the final item on our agenda, which is public comment. Oh, I'm sorry, there's a comment from Melinda. Go ahead, Melinda.
I have a question. When we make a motion and we second it, when is the time for discussion among the members?
So anybody can make a motion at any time.
Okay,
If there is a second, then it's ripe for discussion, but you could say, before we move there, I have a question or if there's not a second, you can make another motion. You could ask for clarification. You could always ask questions right up and through the time, or make comments up and through the time there's a final vote. But once there's a final vote, that's now the matter is done. So just because, let's just play it out. Let's say Tiffany made, the first thing anyone said is Tiffany said, I vote to approve staff's recommendation. But then you are sitting there, well, I don't quite understand staff's recommendation. I want to get some more clarity. Can you please, Catherine, explain to me whatever it is that you didn't understand? And after that, then somebody else could come in second, or they could make an entirely different motion. If they made an entirely different motion to say, instead of having December 2nd, January 3rd or whatever, then whichever one of those two motions got a second first would be the one that was voted on.
would it be appropriate after there's a motion and a second to say to the members, is there any discussion on this item before a final vote?
Well, you could do that. And then that's something, so the way it will work in the future, assuming that there's a chair and a vice chair, whoever is chairing the meeting will usually be essentially doing traffic control on these things, making sure that basically what Catherine's doing right now. And so that person will be responsible for ensuring that, okay, has everybody had a chance to ask other questions or make a comment? And then even if there's been a second, waiting to make sure that's done before you take the vote.
So we have another comment from Brad. Go ahead, Brad.
This is on a separate issue. I understand Brown Act and I'm fully in support of transparency, but in full recognition of that, should we accept questions that are posed from anonymous sources for record keeping and other issues? I think that's
a good point, Rick. Do I, when
the
I
spirit
read,
of transparency.
I'm sorry, Brad, I interrupted you. That absolutely is something I should have asked. On the comments from community members, if there isn't, do I need to identify who the community member is? And is there any rule around the number of comments per person? Like, I don't think we covered that.
So a person can make a comment anonymously. You could come to the board chambers and say, I'm not telling you my name, and they still have the right to comment. So I don't think that let me say it more definitively. We do not need to require that they say their name before we consider their comment. what the limitation is that the member of the public gets their 2 minutes or their one ability to write a comment and have it read. They don't get to keep coming back to the item and speak for another 2 minutes and another 2 minutes. It's a 2 minute or 3, whatever it is that the body decides is the limitation. That's their opportunity. But that same person can come back on item. They can make a comment on item 2, then they could come back and make an comment on item 3. Then they could come back and make an item and off agenda. So it's limited one comment basically per agenda item.
So if
But
I have 3 comments for one off agenda item from the same person, do I only read the first comment?
Well, I think that we've got to be a little bit flexible here because we don't have the ability to give that person a full 2 minutes.
Okay.
Or even a minute for that matter. The only ability they have is to write those comments. So, and I don't know what the character limitation is for these chat boxes. So I would say let's be a little bit flexible here and allow those 3 comments to be read.
Okay.
And if the person wants to identify themselves, that's great. If they don't, that's their right. I will say if we ever had a hearing, in which we might or might not, but if we had a hearing, certainly the willingness of somebody to identify themselves or not could be considered in how much credibility we give the person. But we can't limit their ability to speak by their willingness to provide their name.
I do have 2 comments from members. Can I go ahead and take those comments now? Muriel?
So based on what I've seen in city council meetings, the board can choose to allow for additional comments beyond our normal allotment, and we can engage the commenter in conversation, ask them questions and so forth. This is based on what I've seen in council meetings.
So, yes, the body can decide. We normally give 2 minutes. Today, we're going to get 5. But the problem is if you start changing the standard, then you have no standard. And it could be that somebody will decide or ask the question, why did you decide today I only get 2 minutes, but yesterday somebody, or last meeting, somebody got 5. So I would encourage you, if you set a standard, that's the standard you keep. And it is allowable under the Brown Act to have a dialogue, should you choose, with members that of the public that want to make comments on agenda items. And again, that's permissible because it's on the agenda. So anyone that was interested in that item knows that that's what this body is going to be talking about on that day. But it is totally impermissible to talk and have a dialogue and answer questions on off agenda items because nobody but the commenter knew that was going to be discussed. And therefore, the rest of the public was not afforded the opportunity to know the body would be discussing it. Did that answer your question?
I have one more comment from William before I move on.
Okay.
I was wondering, doesn't the person have to at least identify or indicate that they are a constituent of Sacramento County?
The short answer is no.
No.
Okay, if I don't have any other comments from our members, I am going to move on to the public comment on off agenda items. And as Rick indicated, these are not open for discussion. They're just going to be read out loud. So the first one is a question: when was the final AB 109 budget decided? The second one is: when will the final budget breakdown be posted publicly? And the third question is: how did the approved AB 109 budget follow the CCP plan priorities that was approved by the Board of Supervisors? So Rick, when we get the off agenda comments, how, as a CCP advisory body, are we supposed to proceed with?
So I believe it's appropriate for when somebody asks questions like that, especially when the person's not identified, to say that, and I don't know if this body has an Outlook mail address.
We will be establishing one for
Okay.
future meetings.
So once we have that, you could give that address out and say, if you still have these questions, or these questions are better posed to this address, and then staff can answer them offline.
Okay.
Okay.
So with that, those are all of the public comments on off agenda items I have. So we are at the final point of adjournment. And since Rick indicated I can reach out to schedule the next meeting with, oh, it looks like I do have 2 additional comments. Rick, should I go ahead and move forward? There's 2 additional public comments I missed.
Sure.
So the additional 2 comments say, the fact that we don't have 2 minutes to speak is a problem in and of itself. There is a 4th public comment. So hopefully I covered them all. Members of the CCPAB can also see the question and answer. Please let me know if you guys saw something I missed. I think I read all of them. Yes, I don't think I missed any of them. Oh, Bill and Melinda. Bill, I'm sorry. Did you see one that I missed?
I actually do. We didn't say anything about when will the final budget breakdown be posted publicly. There's a specific.
I didn't read that one.
Yeah.
Okay, so that was another comment. When will the final budget breakdown be posted publicly? And Melinda, did you? I can't hear you. You're muted, Melinda.
In terms of documenting the questions, could they be appended to the minutes of the meeting?
Well, because this is our first meeting, weren't able to work out all of the bugs for the comment piece. So between now and the next meeting, we're working on having the audio option for the 2-minute audio comments, as well as an email inbox, so that we cover all of our bases. But today was kind of like a special, we'd rather have the meeting with the limitations publicly than not having the meeting at all.
So maybe we could just include these comments in the minutes, so at least that they're open to the public when we publish the minutes. Recognizing that from now on, we'll be having spoken comments.
So Rick, on the minutes, is that something that should be documented comments or being read out loud and in the recording was it?
So typically there would not be a recitation of every public comment. Again, the meeting, as you indicated, Catherine, is recorded, and that's where it is preserved. The minutes don't need to get that detailed about every, like I said, every public comment that was made.
Okay, Bill, there's one last comment before we close out. Bill has his hand raised. You're muted, Bill.
Here he is again. There were 2 items that we had planned to take up in September before we found we needed to revamp this meeting and do the Brown Act training and so on and so on. And I want to make sure that they flow forward to October.
So I would have to get an email from members for agenda items in October. So as the staff, any agenda items any members would like next month need to be emailed directly to me. We don't want to violate the Brown Act, so just send them to me only, please. Is
Okay.
that correct, Rick?
Yes.
And so they can't be suggested here by me now?
Well, again, Bill, nobody has the ability to know that Bill is going to come and make suggestions about what should be on future agendas, because we don't have a space for that on this agenda. So that's why today, until in our next meeting, I think the best course is you have this topic that you want, just email Catherine when you get offline. And then in the future, what we should include is right before or right after public comment off agenda, member comments.
Okay, so this is just a special case today. All right, got it. Thank you.
Well,
Yeah, we're learning today.
Yeah, this is
Sorry,
baby
everyone.
steps today.
So that said, I appreciate everyone's patience with the process for our first public meeting, and I will hopefully be more refined at our next meeting and have things worked out. We have concluded the public comment on off-agenda item sessions and will adjourn now. Thank you, everyone, for your participation. Have a great day.
Thank you.